The worst thing is, like, say if you have a kid and you love baseball and you force your kid to play baseball, you got to go to baseball practice, and you force your kid to play professionally.
Yep. Bro, the car ride home is the worst thing for kids after tournaments, after games, man. Okay, now we got to have that conversation. But if you are over critiquing their performance, hey, you didn't shoot correctly, you didn't box out correctly, you didn't do this correctly. They just heard that from their coaches. They don't need to hear it from you too. Hey, what's good, everyone? Welcome back to the Big Game Podcast. My name is Gabe. In today's episode, we are going to be reacting to a conversation between Joe Rogan and his buddy Andrew Schulz, in which they discuss their roles in parenting all around the context of youth sports. How much should they put into it? How much they should kind of like pull back? How much they let the child do their own thing and how much input they give. So it's a very interesting conversation. They go in a whole bunch of different directions, but I think we can glean a couple of helpful insights to help you parents out there or you kids out there with this whole youth sports dynamic. So I'm excited to get into the conversation. But before we do, if you're new here and you haven't subscribed, well, we drop episodes every week reacting to youth sports, clips, conversations, and everything else. So hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And let's get into the video. All right, guys, so to cue this up, give you a little bit of context of what they're talking about. They're talking about child actors right here, and they're talking about their skill set and how much of it is the child actor and how much of it is the parents as the driving force. And so Andrew then pivots to talking about sports, and he's going to bring up an example of a professional driver. And so, well, I won't explain anymore. I'll let Andrew just explain that. Let's go ahead and do that.
You know the guy who drives for Red Bull, Max Verstappen.
Oh yeah, I've heard his name. Yeah,
Well, he's like considered the best driver right now. Like, despite maybe the car not being elite, he's so elite that he can compete with maybe better cars on the track. And he's already won a bunch of championships, etc. But like, I think his dad was also a driver, and apparently, like, his dad cultivated a next champion, and like that was the goal.
Tiger Woods do.
And but the thing right there is like, your kid is going to be born with certain things, and you can, if they have that like ambition, that hunger, and that resilience, you can give them some tough love and maybe make a champion out of them. But some of them don't.
All right, let's pause right there because Andrew gave a great example, and now he's going into the competitive drive that some kids naturally have. Now, let me back up. Let me kind of frame this a certain way to help you understand where I'm going with this. Kids play sports. There are a lot of kids that play sports all throughout the world. And to the level of, or there's different levels in which they compete. There's recreational, there's like club, and then there's like super competitive club, right? So there's different levels. And I think what he's trying to get at is, what is the outcome you want to get from playing sports? Do you want to be a professional? Do you want to just have fun, right? I think it's super important to start with that question. Like, why are we doing this? Are we just doing this for exercise? For example, when I go to the gym, I'm not trying to compete for any type of championship. I'm just trying to get exercise without getting hurt. That's primarily a lot of what I'm doing if I play basketball or lacrosse or anything like that. So, my desires are different than when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I wanted to play in the NBA. I was going hard in the paint. I wasn't that tall though. So, there's that. So I didn't continue with it. But when we examine our kids, we want to see if the goal is to play super competitive, right? Maybe at the professional ranks. Do they have a desire to go and train on their own? Do they enjoy it? Do they find it as fun? You don't always need that, but it's very important that is somewhere inside of a child so that we can then guide them correctly, because he's going to talk about what happens when that's not inside of a child, when the child doesn't want to do those particular things, doesn't want to get up and train, doesn't want to go out and play. Like, you might be forcing the issue and driving a huge wedge between you and your kid and the love of the game that they may not have yet. So you got to be careful. Well, let's let them cook.
And I think that you could break a kid like that too. That's the tricky thing I always think with my daughter is like, and any future kids is, I don't know if I don't have that at this point in my life. I don't have that. I need to make you into something.
I'm going to pause right there. I think Andrew is onto something, and I think he has a great perspective. He doesn't want to force the desires that he has for his children to be competitive or to be professional or whatever sport that they want to get into. If they want to get into sports, they may not want to be, too involved in sports. I think it's important 100%. I think for the most part, every child should do some type of physical activity that challenges them, especially early on. I'm a big advocate for multi-sport participation, especially early on. Not super competitive, just go out and go and play. We'll get to the competitive juice and the competitive levels later, even to the professional ranks. We'll talk about that later. But I like his perspective so far, which is I don't want to force my child to do something they're not passionate about. Now, yes and no. Yes and no. So let's just say I have 2 sons, right? They may not be passionate about finances, but best believe they're going to learn about it, right? They're going to take some classes on it because that's going to be something that could help them later on. The value in which the value in the things that you do has to be, how should I say, it has to be weighed properly. Is there a lot of value in playing competitive lacrosse where you don't have a big outcome or a payday later on? As opposed to, like, say, with finances, you're always going to deal with money. That's something they have to do. Martial arts, mixed martial arts, that's something that they have to do at least early on to learn how to protect themselves. That's what I'm going to drive and push. Not to be a professional fighter or anything like that. I don't want them, sparring too much, but I want them to learn the basics so that they have a good foundation later on. So it's give and take with that, right? And we have to determine what is valuable in our system. I think when we're talking about just, your main line sports, right? Basketball, football, soccer, right? Is that something that is super valuable that you're always going to do? No, not necessarily. Finances is something you're going to always have to take care of. So that's something that I'm going to push my kids towards a lot more, whether they're passionate about it or not. So yes and no. For sports, I don't even care what my kids play. Honestly, except for soccer. We don't do soccer in this household. But I don't really care what they play. But if they say, hey, Dad, I want to play this sport and I want to get really good at it. Okay, let's go. And Joe's going to talk about this later on. It's like, look, if you want to put effort into it, I'm there. I'll support you. But if you don't, I'm not going to force the issue, right? And again, sometimes you might have to force the issue just a little bit. You have to take stock of who your child is. You have to assess them and you got to see, does this kid really want to do it? Do they just need a little bit of a push? Do they get motivation by you telling them what to do? Is that the type of person they are? I've had the luxury of coaching thousands of kids now. Kids have different motivations. Kids respond to certain coaching in different ways, right? Some kids, you can just tell them once, got it, locked in, done. Some kids, you can tell them very sweetly, very kindly. It doesn't sink in. You need to get on them. You need to put a foot in their butt and tell them look, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, and I need you to do it multiple times a day. And then, oh, okay, I got you. I'm going to do it. I need somebody. So if you can figure that out about your child early, I think you're going to be more successful later on in how you guide them. And the goal is to guide them, to help them, to help them go through these experiences, through failure, through challenges, to winning, right? If you don't know what to do, you're listening to the right podcast. Okay, let's get back into it.
You shouldn't. I just kind of got to let them be themselves.
Yeah.
Because they all are going to have, the worst thing is say if you have a kid and you love baseball and you force your kid to play baseball, you got to go to baseball practice and you force your kid to play professionally.
Yep. I was lucky I was ambitious.
I'm going to just pause right there because Joe is absolutely right. I've seen so many kids whose sports careers, whatever the sport is, didn't really pan out, and they've kind of even developed a resentment for the sport or for training because their parents just were pushing the tempo too much on it. You got to do this, you got to do that. It didn't really come from the kid, and so now the kid doesn't even want to play the sport no more because they associate negative feelings and the grind and the challenges and the frustration, the anxiety, the worries with that sport because of what their parents kind of did early on. It's kind of like, this traumatic experience that they've had over and over. It's always filled with conflict. It's always filled with, you have to do this, you have to do that. No, you don't. So that's what Joe's talking about right there. They resent it. And that's not what you want. If you want your kid to be passionate about a certain thing, let them take some time to develop. I have a story about this I'm going to share at the end of the video, so make sure you stay around for that. And it's a real world story with a family that I know that pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and their kid didn't really want to do it. And I would always tell them, I guess I'm going into the story now. I would always tell them, hey, he has to decide whether or not he wants to do this, especially at the competitive level, because you're not going to be holding his hand. You're not going to be there coaching on the sideline. I mean, unless you want to coach and you get that position. At the high school and college level, it's going to be on him. So you got to let him go and do these things. It may not look the way you want. He may not be training the way you want, but guess what? If he starts to develop a fire and a passion, maybe he's lost a little bit. Maybe he got cut. Let that fire just start to burn inside of his belly. That will cause an action. Anyways, I'll get more into that later on. Let's continue with this.
And I had parents that just supported the things that I was ambitious about. So if I wanted to hoop, they were like, all right, let's go play that. And my dad was like, let's go every single day, whatever you want to do. Like, let's go. But I never felt this stage mom or dad presence where they were going, hey, you missed 4 shots today. Let's review those shots that you missed and let's figure out ways that you can't do it.
Right. Bro, the car ride home is the worst thing for kids after tournaments, after games, man. Just laying into your kid because of their recreational performance. Oh, you didn't hustle. You didn't do this. And okay, I'm gonna back up because sometimes you need that. Like, if you're in the club space and your kid's not trying, your kid, and they're not giving effort, okay, no, we got to have that conversation. But if you are over critiquing their performance, hey, you didn't shoot correctly, you didn't box out correctly, you didn't do this correctly. They just heard that from their coaches. They don't need to hear it from you too, because now you're not developing a relationship of trust and someone that can give good, education and good points if the child wants it. You gotta let them come to you and say, hey, look, and again, Joe's gonna get into this. Joe is very wise. Good on Joe Rogan. One of the best ways to have a harmonious sports relationship with your child is you got to allow them to do their own thing and then to come to you. Now, sometimes we need to initiate that conversation and be like, hey, I'm here for you. If you want to talk about it, I got you. We could break it down together. But you got to also be okay with them saying, no, I'm okay, Dad. No, I'm okay, Mom. And it's easier said than done because you want to engage in that way. You want to help them the best that you can. You want them to be a winner. Now, there's caveats to that. You could want them to win so much that it just supersedes anything else. Their development, their enjoyment of the sport, that's not the goal. If you want them to just win at all costs, do they want that? If they want that, then hey, we're on the same level. We're on the same page. But they may not want that. Okay? So you have to find this balance. Okay? There must be balance in the force. You must find this balance of providing feedback that hopefully is constructive and not deconstructive. Again, sometimes you got to put a foot in your child's butt and be like, hey, look, you're not hustling. And if you're not going to put in that time, energy, and effort because you said you wanted to, and you're not doing it, then what are we doing here? We're not going to waste time on this. You know what I mean? That's a conversation that needs to happen too. But if you see your kid trying, you see them training, and they just don't have the best performance, bro, it's a game. We're talking about a lot of rec games in these situations, a lot of club games that really don't matter, that are just there for experience. This is how I would approach it. Okay. I'm going to just give you my approach to it is I would look at my child and before we even get in that car, we've already done the work. Okay. I've already assessed them. We've hopefully built this trust, right? This relationship where we can have an open conversation and hopefully it's a sport I understand. And I'll be like, hey, Zion, that's my kid's name. How do we do today, buddy? Do you want to chat about anything? If not, totally cool, man. If he says, yeah, Dad, you know what? There's a couple things that I want to focus on that I want to really dial in this week in training or blah, blah, blah. Okay, got it. Let's see how we could do that. Let me give you some perspectives. Let me give you what I saw from there. But I'm not going to like force the issue. If he's like, hey, Dad, you know what, man? It was a hard tournament. I just don't want to talk about it right now. I'm kind of disappointed or blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm going to back off. I'll be like, you know what, man? Let's go get something to eat. Let's go enjoy our time. But you gave effort. That's all I can ask for right now. And if you want to talk about it, I'll talk about it later. But if that's not the relationship you guys have, then the conversation in the car ride home really sucks. Let's get back into it. That's a long monologue.
Kind of let me have that on my own.
Yeah.
I don't need you to insert your ambition into me. I feel like that's kind of selfish in a lot of ways.
It is, and it's like you got to know when the line is. Like maybe they do want advice. Like maybe they are trying to get better at this thing. But you have to have the kind of communication with your kid. Be like, do you want some help? Want me to help you?
Yeah.
You know, like I can give you some information.
Yeah.
Like say if your kid wanted to do stand up.
Yeah.
And your kid started doing stand up and you know, they're bombing and you're like, do you want me to talk to you? You want to just work this out on your own? Like you have to have that kind of open level of communication with your kids where they can tell you like, hey, just leave me the alone right now. Like, okay. Yeah.
Sorry for the language, but he's absolutely right. I mean, that is the right way to approach it. I just add on the end, you need to set up that relationship early on in your kid's life. Okay. You don't want to go too hard in the paint and you also want to be patient. I think the most successful parents that I've seen over my time of coaching and also, you know, my friends at church and things like that are the ones who allow their kids to go through difficult challenges. And if they need help, I'm there to provide that. But they've also set up a system to where, hey, you could always come and talk to mom. You could always come and talk to dad. I'm going to help you guys through this. This is what my job is. One part of my job, right? And now you see that in the relationship in the sports context where, hey, do you want to talk about it? You want to talk about your performance? It's okay if you don't. You can give me a couple of action items that you want to, you know, whatever, however you want to approach it, right? I'm going to let you do you. I'm not going to let you. You do you. Okay. That has been super successful for a lot of families. And you all know the opposite of that. You've probably seen parents on the side like, come on, man, you got to try this. You got to do this. Coach just told them to do something completely different, and you're telling them to do the opposite. That don't work. That don't fly. It creates so much confusion. Joe's right. Okay? If you're struggling with something, you want to talk about it? If not, we cool. Let's hear what he has to say.
I know you bombed. You know, it sucks.
Yeah.
I can tell you about my bombs. I bombed a lot.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I learned. I got better after the bombing. Like it's like it sucks, but it's actually good for you.
So you're delicate with your bait.
Yeah, you have to be. I have daughters. You know, if I had a son, I'd beat the out of him. Dang you, bitch! Shit. Make sure that he knows I could kill him with my bare hand. You got
it. Joe's hilarious. Andrew's hilarious. They're both funny guys. Yeah, just speaking really quick to the difference between guys and girls, man, it's totally different. It's totally different. I've coached guys, I've coached girls. The way you coach them, a lot of the times is a little bit different. Okay. The attention span, the emotional responses that, you know, either of them have, the competitive drive, right? It's just different. I think anyone who says it's not different doesn't coach enough and doesn't coach either or, you know what I mean? So you got to be mindful of that. And we can go into another episode. We're really not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the philosophies of coaching our kids and really like discipling our kids, how much and then how less, right? There's probably a better way to say that, but how much do we pour into them? And then when do we, you know, kind of let off the gas, right? So I really enjoyed Andrew's and Joe's perspective on how they are approaching and how Joe, because Joe has 3 older daughters, Andrew, I believe, has a younger daughter, how they are approaching the thoughts about youth sports or like any type of performance, acting, you know, being a comedian, right? Being a NASCAR driver, whatever it is, right? I enjoy these perspectives on it, right? The other things I would add too is like, look, if you're out of your depth and you don't know the sport, then maybe you might want to seek out a trainer, right? You might want to seek out someone that can give you a little bit of information. In today's age, we have so much information online, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, right? You can find some information about the sport so that you can have a more educated conversation with your kid, right? You could also just go and watch the practices. Those are simple things that you can do and just sit down, listen, don't give your kid any instruction. That's like one of the worst things you can do is try and give your kid instructions while the coach is giving them instructions. It just doesn't work. So kudos to Andrew, kudos to Joe on their philosophies around rearing up their kids in the context of youth sports. It's really good. Alrighty, everyone, that brings us to the end of the episode. Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Let me know your thoughts below in the comments section. Let me know, am I on to something? Am I totally off? Or what are your philosophies around, rearing kids? One thing that we didn't really talk about was how, Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, and Kobe Bryant did. We'll go into that into a later episode. But I want to hear your thoughts. How do you think that you can get the best outcome for your kids to where they really enjoy the sport and that you guys can have a really synced up, harmonious relationship to where it's not filled with tension and frustration? Let me know in the comments, okay? Give me some tips. All right, y'all. Until the next one, I'll catch you soon. Whoa, whoa, whoa. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell too if you want to be alerted when the next video drops. All right, catch you next time.